Okay. Well, good morning, good afternoon, everyone, wherever you are joining us from. Welcome, everyone, to this exciting conversation about what's worrying the workforce today. We have an incredible panel that I will introduce in a moment. We know that it is so challenging for Canadians to get back to work. Employers are struggling to attract and retain talent. Employees are financially stressed, and many simply don't want to go back the way that they worked before COVID. And you know that the pandemic has taken a toll on workplaces, and getting employees back into the office is complex. Inflation and increased expenses are a top concern for 85% of a recent National Payroll Institute survey, and people are saving less as a result and financially pressured. So this is creating a worried workforce that is spending time and productivity stressed about these issues. And this number absolutely shocks me, costing employers and the economy an estimated $20.3 billion in input. So what can you, the employer, do to attract and retain employees? Well, this panel has the answers. So let me introduce our experts for the hour. Stephen Van Alstine, Vice President, Education at National Payroll Institute. Evangeline Berube, Vice President, Strategic Accounts at Robert Half. And Clare Kumar, Productivity Catalyst and Executive Coach. And myself, Kelley Keehn, as your moderator today. I'm a personal finance educator and the founder of Money Wise Workplaces, the sponsor of this incredible panel and conversation. MoneyWise Workplaces is an impartial financial education platform where we demystify money management by drawing on behavioral psychology and data. It's a financial well-being benefit that empowers employees with personalized knowledge and skill. So without further ado, let's get to this very timely and important discussion. So Stephen, I'd love to start with you. National Payroll Institute just came out with their latest research. Can you tell us your findings and what you're hearing from employers?
Absolutely. First of all, Kelley, I want to say what a pleasure it is to join you. You know, you and I've had a long relationship, and I look forward to our conversations as well with Evangeline and Clare. I think we're all going to bring some interesting perspectives to this conversation, and I appreciate you highlighting our research. It is research that we've been doing for well over a decade, and it's evolved over time, because what we're finding is the behaviors of employees, the wants and needs of employers, they're all, they're changing constantly. And we're certainly seeing that post-pandemic, there has been a real shift in sort of advances that have been made with what employees are doing with their net pay, with their paycheck, what their concerns are. So as we know, we're all going back to work. We're going back to in-person work. And again, we all have different perspectives on that. Some are still working remotely, some are still working at home, but the stressors around finances still are there. And I think they become amplified depending on what is going on. As you mentioned, inflation is top of the news, and inflation is a big concern, and rising costs are of huge concern to employees. What's happening is that is translating to impacting the workplace. So you made that comment about the $20 billion in lost productivity around what people are doing and how they're stressing at work. And actually, our research, we released some of our research recently, which still shows those stressors. But what we're going to do for November, which is Financial Literacy Month, and I'm sure you're going to want to highlight that, Kelley, is that we're finding that amount is gone up astronomically. So what that means is people are taking those stresses to the workplace, whether that's working from home or working in an actual workplace. And that's of huge concern. So we've kind of created these groups through some data that we've sort of been working on with our Financial Wellness Lab partners around those that are stressed, those that are coping, and those that are comfortable. And the shift is away from the comfortable and coping, more to that stressed category. And so I think what we want to talk about is the impact that's having on work, and what we can do, or what we can suggest to alleviate those concerns, to assist our employees in addressing and dealing with those concerns.
Thank you, Stephen. Yes, we have worked for some time together, and I love that tool that you have. I know we'll have tools at the end, financialist.ca. And for everyone joining us, please feel free to start thinking about your questions and put your comments in. We'd love to have this an interactive conversation with you over the next hour. Thank you for that, Stephen. So Evangeline, I'd love to talk with you as well about the research that Robert Half has revealed recently, and if you can speak to that research, please.
Pardon me. Absolutely. And I would like to echo Stephen's comments. It's wonderful to be here today. So thank you for having us or having me join you and having us share some of that research. And it's great to connect with Stephen again, and yourself, Kelley, and get to connect with Clare for the first time. So that's wonderful. So yes, Robert Half we've been doing research for a really long time. So similar to what Stephen had commented on. And most recently, we've put out our 2023 salary guide, which highlights a lot around retention, attraction, compensation trends, all of those things. And really what we're finding a little bit interesting is particularly in the areas where Robert Half specializes, which is accounting, finance, technology, human resources, procurement, HR, those sorts of areas, that even though there is talks of economic downturn, potential job losses, a lot of those things, we aren't seeing that reflected in our business right now. So we're seeing demand for the skills that we take to market for our clients, and our candidates are still very much in demand. So as organizations try to, either sustain operations, grow, any of those things, and they need that talent, it's definitely a pressure on them to attract and retain some of these really good employees. And so so consequently, that has created a lot of different, because it's now very much an employee market, a lot of different trends as we're kind of going into people trying to hire and all of those things compared to what we would have seen 2 years ago, or just over 2 years ago. We've also seen through much of our surveys that, through the past 2.5 years, a lot has changed with employees in terms of their expectations around workforce structure, work-life balance, the values that their organization demonstrates. So, diversity, equity, inclusion has become really, really important. Culture, all of those pieces. And so, and we don't see any of that changing. So because of that, organizations are also, if you're looking to attract and retain top talent, you have to be really mindful of all of those pieces and ensure that your organization is aligned with what, people are looking for now and will be well into the future.
Thank you for sharing that research, and a perfect segue to Clare. That's often I see her on TV speaking to that research. So Clare, what are you hearing from people as they're striking that balance between, really what they focused on, maybe more family pre-pandemic or during the pandemic and now?
Yeah, I mean, straight up from a client yesterday, I'm looking for another career opportunity. And if they don't allow me or invite me to work from home at least part of the time, I won't even look at them. So a dramatic shift has taken place. You're absolutely right. People have got in touch with what actually creates a richer, fuller life. And we've witnessed that. We've been invited to experience the full humanity of the workplace. And the leaders who are recognizing that and embedding that in their leadership approach are going to be much further ahead than leaders that are hanging on to a quest for convenience or a personal bias to say, I want your chair and a derriere, your derriere and a chair. I mean, I want everybody back in the office is going to be a really hard sell, and you will lose people and you will not attract the richest performers. I think it's John Trigakos, who's a fellow member of the Staples Work From Anywhere Advisory Council member, talks about research that shows that it's your top 20% that is demanding to be able to continue to work from home. Recent research as well talks about the fact that 78% of Canadians prefer working from home to their regular work environment. That speaks to a lot of opportunity. But the big takeaway really is hashtag productivity is personal. So if we want to invite the richest performance from as many people as possible, it's in our best interest to acknowledge that and create a work experience and culture that really honors those different preferences and invites that performance to the table.
Thanks, Clare. And I'd love to hear from the people that are on this call, because there's some really, I can see some of the people on here. I know you have phenomenal backgrounds. We'd love to hear, what are you seeing? What are you hearing from your employees? I know anecdotally, my own little research, when I was in Toronto the last month, was the condo that I was in. Often I get up at 4 a.m. for media, and I counted how many lights were on at 4, at 5, at 6, at 7, and even at 8. And it was pretty shocking how few were on compared to pre-pandemic. It would have been totally lit up, I think, by 6 or 7 in the morning. So that was just my own little anecdotal research that I still didn't see a lot of lights on. So I think people are enjoying getting a little bit of sleep and still being virtual, which leads into our next question of, what the future of the workplace is, and is hybrid here to stay? And Clare, you touched on it, but I'll just jump back to you for a minute if you'd like to expand on your thoughts.
Yeah, without question. So I mentioned being part of the Staples Work From Anywhere Advisory Council. So I've been following the conversation very, very closely for 2 years. I've been lobbying for 25, 30 years, the C-suite, for reduced work weeks, flexible work weeks. So I feel like finally that the conversation is on the table. And it's very clear, and I think it's very much supported by the economic environment and the fact that we are in an employee market, that we're not going back. The genie is out of the bottle, the toothpaste is out of the tube, whatever analogy you want. We're not going to go back, because while I lobbied for this 25 years ago, and I actually left the corporate world because I was not able to work from home, despite working for a company that made the technology and sold the technology to enable people to work from home, it's now something that we've come to enjoy. We understand that people are more productive if they can control where they work, to a large degree. So it's not going back. Hybrid is here to stay, and we really need to embrace the challenge. It is harder. So I'll just plant the seed that hybrid is harder to manage. So we need a new set of skills, and we need to figure out what that is. But if we can rise to that challenge, we are going to have a much more inclusive, robust workforce at our fingertips.
Thanks, Claire, and thanks, Cheryl from LinkedIn, saying great topics for professionals. So thanks for your comment, Cheryl. And Chris, interesting. Yes, very much so. Stephen, I'll throw to you next. I believe it was a Financial Post about a week or two ago said that employees saved on average around $11,000 by not going into the office. So, of course, a lot of people also don't want to go in, money and sleep. What do you think? What do you think about hybrid, getting people back into the office?
Yeah, thanks so much, Kelley. And I can come at this from the perspective of speaking to our profession and what we've seen as trends in our profession, the payroll profession, as well as being a leader. Because our research showed that people were absolutely able to save, and that's what it demonstrated. The results of our survey showed that people were able to save close to 10%. So what we've seen in the recent survey is a dip back down as people have been going back to the office, because obviously there's lunches, there's coffees, there's parking, there's gas, there's even wardrobes. Like we're hearing people say, like, I have to keep all of these different wardrobes for depending on what I'm doing, even though when we're online and we're virtual, we have to sort of be presentable, even though presentable maybe from sort of here up, right? Because I'm wearing jeans right now, but that's okay. But interestingly enough, again, I have to agree with Claire. The genie's out of the bottle. I think hybrid work is absolutely here to stay. And I think some of the things that are pushing it are the pressures that are being put on employees, right? So, there are economic pressures. And so what employers have to do is they have to learn to be able to balance those things. How can we balance the expectations and still provide those benefits to employees? So I'm really interested to hear what Evangeline has to say. I'll make one more comment because she's probably hearing from what candidates are looking for and what our employers are willing to provide based on kind of that balance between placing candidates and expectations of employers. But the one additional thing I want to say is about our profession. I think there's going to be certain professions that are going to lend themselves to being remote. And payroll is one of them. HR is one of them because we deal with such confidential information. When you're processing the payroll and when you're submitting the payroll, it's a heads down. You got to get that in. And, you can evaluate productivity very easily in that role because either people are getting paid or they're not. And so I think what we're going to find is there's going to be certain segments of professionals who are going to certainly be able to do that. And again, I think the big challenge and the big challenge from the C-suite, as Claire said, where there is some pushback, is about productivity. How do we measure it? How do we keep on top of it? And trust. How do we trust our employees? So all of these things are sort of coming together. But the one thing that I will 100% agree with Claire on is we're not going back to the office 100% of the time. We may be going back to those roles where you have to be on a production line or you have to be doing something physically at the employer's site. But there's a lot of us who are not, and therefore there's going to be this balance that's going to have to be struck. So again, I not to kind of put it over to Evangeline, because Kelley, I want to hear your thoughts too, but I'm sure Evangeline's going to have some great insights as to what she's seeing on the ground and what her staff and people are seeing on the ground.
Thank you, Stephen. And yeah, I don't think people really appreciate what National Payroll Institute does and what payroll does and how many people seamlessly just expect that check in their bank account. And anyone obviously who went through the Phoenix payroll fiasco with the government understands how important it is getting that paycheck for sure. Yeah, I will throw it over to Evangeline. I'm very curious to hear, because from a lot of business owners I'm talking to and hearing from, sometimes the conversation is being had, or the question is being had, look, if employees can work from anywhere, then we can hire people from anywhere. Like, how might that also affect the Canadian job market, that you can get a job anywhere, but also what does that mean to the stability moving forward? And by the way, John, you asked a phenomenal question. We will get to your question after this. So thank you for that. Keep the questions coming in. Yeah, I'd love to hear from you, Evangeline.
Yeah, thank you. So absolutely. I mean, we see that, based on our research, as well as, discussions that we're having every day with our clients and our candidates, that that flexibility is the future of work. So what that looks like for different individuals, for different organizations, is going to be different. It's going to evolve. I often say to people, because this can be a very contentious issue when you go into some organizations and you have certain people that are very, strong in terms of their opinions around 5 days a week, people need to be in the office. It's really important for culture. But then alternatively, then you have others saying, but culture can also be hybrid. So it looks different. And to your point, Claire, it's harder. You got to be really creative, but you can also do it there too. So yeah, there's just a lot of different opinions about this. And so, I see us building the ship while we're sailing it right now. We've never done this as, like an overall workforce ever. And so it's going to be a bit bumpy. We're going to learn a few things along the way. But I mean, overall, we see employees want flexibility. And that doesn't necessarily mean that they're demanding 5 days a week to work remotely, because a lot of people don't want to work 5 days remotely. They like to come into the office and mingle with their colleagues. So that's where I see the hybrid is probably the option that's going to be the most popular down the road. But again, it's going to look different for every organization. But there's just a lot of advantages that people have found through working hybrid work. So from an employee perspective, it's helping them from work-life balance. They can spend a lot more time with their kids. They're not running around as much. They don't have the stress of commuting. The financial side of it has been touched on, is huge. Because there's a lot of extra costs going to the office. So, that's also very helpful. And people can, have a lot more flexibility even in their day when they're working from home. So sometimes, if you got to throw a load of laundry in, or you got to go pick up your kids or things like that, it's a lot easier to maneuver that than when you're having to then also, go to the office. So from an employee perspective, just from an overall mental well-being, financial well-being, it just makes a lot of sense, which then just creates more engaged, more productive people. So further to what Claire was talking about in terms of productivity, absolutely. I even know for myself, I can speak 100% for myself, being able to work from home a lot has absolutely helped me be more productive. So, and we do see that well over 53% of people have said, if I was told that I have to go back to work 5 days a week, I will quit my job. So, and I would suggest that that stat is even probably a little bit higher, but that's what our, the official survey stat. So, we do still see, though, there are certain companies that are requiring people to go back 5 days a week. And so we'll see how that evolves over time. But a lot of organizations have also really seen the benefits, and we've touched a bit on that through some of your comments too, on being able to have flexibility in remote positions, because particularly in our talent short market, if you're looking for really specific talent, you may not have it in your geography. And so a great way to have access to that is if you can open that up across Canada, and in some cases across North America, but then it gets a lot more complicated if you want to do that. So a lot of organizations, because of tax reasons and all of that, but a lot of organizations would rather just go across Canada. And so yeah, it really opens up your talent pool. And so that in some instances is a great alternative for organizations. And it also helps attract really good talent to your organization if they know that they have the option of having some flexibility. You know, from a workforce perspective, we are seeing it certainly adds some complexity, Kelley, to you know, our different markets trying to hire people, because, you know, I know in Edmonton, we have controllers here that are working for companies in BC, companies in Ontario. We see Silicon Valley hiring some of our IT folks here because we have some of the best IT talent in North America in Edmonton because of our U of A. So it does get really complicated. But it doesn't change the fact that as an organization, if you want to attract and retain top talent, the same rules apply. So you need to have your good compensation, your benefits, your perks, your flexibility, culture, all of those things in line. So no matter where your employee is coming from, that's still going to be important. And so it's making sure that you can figure out how to have all of that both in person as well as remote, which is challenging, but not impossible.
Thanks, Evangeline. And actually the perfect segue for John's question, which I'll bring to all of you as well, but I'll start with you, Evangeline, and then to you, Stephen, because I think you've got some really specific research pointing to this. Is first, John is asking how significant are the recession worries, but I love the latter part as well. If you could touch on, are financial wellness programs really helping with retention? And he's loving the content. So Evangeline, I know you guys have some specific research on that, and so does NPI. So if I can throw it to you and then to Stephen and then Claire, if you'd like to weigh in, that'd be great.
Yeah, no, perfect. So so recession is, I think it's playing more and more on people's minds, predominantly because it's in the media. So I don't know if people are necessarily feeling it quite yet across Canada. You know, and I think we've been fairly fortunate across Canada so far. I think there's pockets of the US that are feeling it a bit more right now. But so I think it's on people's minds. Now, financial wellness programs absolutely are important. So I think one of our stats is 44% of people want RSP programs. Like that is an absolute critical component of their benefit program, right along with health and dental. So absolutely financial, like, so that kind of financial component, but just an overall wellness program. And a good wellness program includes three different components. So it includes your financial, it includes your wellness and your physical. Your mental wellness, and your physical wellness. So that is a good, well-rounded wellness program that people will want. And so we absolutely see that as one of the critical benefits that employees are looking for. That, you know, almost half of employees are wanting that component, because I think honestly our economy is so volatile and will continue to be for quite some time. And so the more people can have that support, that education, I think it's critical to people being able to have a productive and engaged work life as well as personal life.
Thank you. And thanks, John, for the question. Stephen, this is the $20.3 billion in lost productivity because people are stressed. And you've got research also saying how much people want their employer to provide this financial wellness. So please speak to that research if you would.
Yeah, thanks so much. And thanks for the question, John, because that's exactly at the crux of the stressors. You know, and Evangeline hit the nail on the head. You know, you cannot look at the news, look at social media and not hear the word recession, you know, and not hear it's not if, it's when. And, you know, I think we're all tired of it because it is weighing on our mental health. It is weighing on the stressors and what we're thinking about when we're at work. So I think we, again, we need to assist employees with the solutions to help take those stresses away. So we've talked about mechanisms to do that, as Evangeline said. You know, some of the benefits, the compensation packages, I think, work well to assist people in balancing those financial expectations that they have. But employers can go beyond that. We've been talking for years about the need to put additional mechanisms in place, not just the ability for employees to save through payroll deduction, but to educate employees. And this is, you know, where Kelley is, you know, a huge advocate for financial literacy, does an amazing job talking about what people need to do, you know, to make sure that they are providing employees with the tools they need to understand. Because again, our recent research showed that a significant percentage of working Canadians are spending at or more than their net pay. If they're spending more than their net pay, where's that going? Not surprisingly, probably to credit card debt. So we've seen a huge increase in credit card debt. So this is all very cyclical because, again, these things are what are causing people to be stressed. They're causing people to be less productive. And, you know, we've got things that we can do as employers to combat that. And I think we really need to start focusing on that. And I wish the media would stop talking about the pending recession, quite honestly.
Thank you, Stephen. And to answer John's question specifically, maybe not specifically with retention, but I'm pretty sure, and correct me if I'm wrong, that some of the National Payroll Institute research points to around 75% of employees saying that they actually think their employer should be offering financial wellness specifically. And I believe 80% or somewhere around there were interested in it. So there's a high desire.
Absolutely. So that does reflect our results, Kelley. There's a big desire for tools, even lunch and learns, you know, mechanisms for people to understand what they can do. And again, employers support them through these easy programs that can be put in place, like savings that come and are put in a dedicated savings account. And again, it can start incrementally. You know, Kelley, I think you've worked with organizations to put programs in place to talk to employees about what incremental savings can do to help support them further down the road. So.
Thank you, Stephen. Yeah, that is definitely a tenet of the MoneyWise workplaces, and talking about the Pay Yourself First programs, so important. Clare, we'd love to have you weigh in.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I was hearing a lot about the value of financial wellness programs in the workplace 4 years ago. So before the pandemic happened, before the inflation challenges that have happened, before any talk of recession. And I know that plays into employees' worries. The piece I want to add, though, is we look at EAP programs, we look at mental health and well-being programs, we look at financial wellness. A big challenge with hybrid is that it's requiring organization and productivity skills which have never been taught. And they're not part of EAP programs. I had a client reach out to me and said, do you think I can get your coaching as part of my benefits? My bank provides really great mental health benefits, but how can I access practical ways to actually hug my amygdala, calm myself down, and get my prefrontal cortex back in the game and prioritize my work and set intentions and all of that. So I think there's something practically about bringing productivity training concretely to workers as well. So along with calming the financial worries, we can have some practical strategies about really being more effective in this changing work dynamic.
Thank you, Clare. Okay, so let's talk about a growing trend that I spoke about on the Marilyn Dennis show last week. Had tons of feedback. And in fact, so often when I'm either back in studio or back in an office or what have you, someone's pulling me over, complaining about that they're being forced to be there 5 days a week. And they're using the quiet quitting trend of just, you know, it's not new, but we would call it slacking or just not being there, what have you. So, Clare, I'm going to throw this to you first on what you think of this trend. I mean, I have a lot of thoughts on how it affects people financially, and how do employers maybe recognize this and lean into the fact that it is happening, especially to Evangeline's point. If people are being forced to be on the job 5 days a week and don't want to be there, I would think they probably have a lot more of that happening with their workforce.
Yeah, well, first thing I need to say is it's a terrible name. It's a beautiful alliteration, and we love alliterations, but it's a terrible name because what this is really is actually redefining or holding to the boundaries which have been redefined and we're enlightened to because of the last couple of years and that rich, fulfilling life that we've discovered. So this is really actually people saying, whew, wait a minute. The contract I was brought in for was to do X, Y, and Z. I am here for that. I am not here for phone calls, emails at 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night. I'm not here for you to intrude on my vacation. I'm actually going to have a boundary and stick to it. One thing I talk a lot about with my clients is playing graceful defense. So for employers, you've got to think about, actually, it's a culture question. Are your leaders emailing your people that are on vacation? Are you encouraging people to take the time off that they need? What's going on in your culture that might be inviting people to say, whoa, enough is enough? And look at it as an opportunity to have a discussion and actually invite deeper engagement. This is not about people disengaging. This is about people saying, I'm going to control what I can control. And now recognize there's an opportunity to dive into what does that mean?
Great points, Claire. And it really is such an interesting conversation. So, Stephen, what are your thoughts in that regard?
Yeah, I have to agree with Claire. I mean, there is this concept of quiet quitting. But what we're also seeing, what we're starting to see, because we've got insights into this from the HR and payroll perspective, because we're processing these transactions, is this thing called the great retirement as well. Because people are getting to a point in their career where they're at a certain age, they're looking at now, markets aside right now, because I just got my statements this morning, and I will tell you for the last 3 months, I have just been filing them without even opening them, because that's what I'm hearing is probably the best advice right now. But that aside, I think if people are looking at their financial situation and seeing a capability to contemplate retiring or even soft retiring, retiring or leaving their organization and doing something that is not at the same capacity because people are burning out. So this is becoming a trend as well. And I think, again, I loved what Evangeline had to say about flexibility being the future of work. If that's not the case, and we know that there's hundreds of thousands of jobs out there that aren't being filled, what is going to happen? There will become a breaking point here where people, and this is why I think employees right now are a little bit more in the driver's seat. And it's not about threatening employers. It's about enlightenment, I think, about seeing the importance of that flexibility. Because again, we've got the quiet quitting, we've got the great retirement happening, and organizations are having to cope with all of that. We've got roles right now that we're looking to try to fill. And what we're finding is there's an urgency to, and you're probably seeing this as well, Evangeline, there's an urgency to addressing those vacancies as quickly as possible, because otherwise people are getting snapped up. And all of a sudden that candidate that you're going to interview in 2-3 days says, I've already got a role and I'm moving on. So it's a very dynamic workforce out there right now. And I think we have to be, the C-suite and leaders within organizations have to become very attuned to what is going on top of making sure that they're looking out for the health and wellness and benefits of their employee population, or else people are going to be leaving.
Well said, Stephen. And to a point that Claire had said, again, an article, I can't remember where I read it a couple of weeks ago, was talking about when you're talking to different generations, it literally is like speaking a different language. So when you're considering what is flexible and what is acceptable to Gen Z, millennials, a baby boomer, the boss might be trying to do the right thing, saying, oh, I'm not going to send an email at 4 o'clock on a Friday. Meanwhile, some employees love that. They love catching up on emails on the weekend. So I think that creates an even greater challenge in this conversation, is that, regardless of whatever you've determined you're trying to bring to increase the culture and flexibility at your workplace, it's generationally rejected or accepted depending on your workforce. So Angeline, if you'd like to comment on that, or what Stephen and Claire spoke about.
Absolutely. So I'll kind of touch on both, I think. So we actually did a small survey on quiet quitting, and actually found that the majority of Canadians are actually quite engaged at work, and if anything, doing more work than their job description per se has them do. And a lot of them are taking courses so that they can upskill, and their organizations are supporting in that. So that's great. But there is definitely a component of the population that is not as engaged, let's say. They're not putting in the effort that the others are. And one of the main components of that, as Stephen mentioned, is burnout. So 33% of those individuals are burned out. And so we definitely, and we're seeing that, across even our own organization, a lot of our clients, we're feeling a lot of stress leaves. So burnout is an absolute problem right now. And so that's where we see organizations have a huge opportunity to re-engage with their teams, and a part of, and so again, I guess kind of further to what you were saying, Kelley, a big piece of that is not just having overarching organization-wide sort of proclamations that and policies that this is how it's going to be. It really, what's required right now, and I think what the pandemic really brought to light for many of us, is that all your people are going to be different. So everyone that reports to you is different. And so even though you can have some overarching policies, there has to be flexibility within those policies so that they work for each individual. And so you will have people on your team that are excelling right now. They are on fire, they're doing all sorts of things, but you'll have a few others that are just dragging. And so that's where you as a leader need to then look to them and really dig in. What's going on? What's happening? Talk to me. And so that you can see where those elements of burnout are coming from. Do you need to help them reprioritize their work? Do they need more flexibility in their schedules? Because maybe they're trying to balance a sick parent at home. Like, there's all sorts of things that people are dealing with. And so I think that component, that individual, empathetic, leadership quality is so critical right now to keep everyone on your team engaged. And then that will help, the team, each individual individually, as well as the organization. Because we also, and then further to what Claire had seen, had mentioned, we see 17% of the people putting in less effort were just rejecting the hustle culture. So people just saying, enough, like, I'm not going to be driving all over the place. Go, 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 go. I'm not doing that anymore. And I'm actually seeing a lot of that with clients, because I'm finding things are starting to get busy again, like all of a sudden there's all this stuff going on, and I'm seeing a number of people going, whoa, okay, it's just too much. Like, I just don't want to do this anymore. So I think we're going to see more and more of that pushback, Claire, to your point.
Yeah, great points, Evangeline. Our baseline changes, right? Like, how many people want to, if you're in Toronto or Edmonton, head downtown for an event, if you can hop on online and sit in the comfort of your home with my slippers on, right? It's, our baselines have changed. So then our stress levels change as well. As you think, I'll throw this to you first, Claire, as you think towards like 2023, 2024, what are your thoughts on what employers can do to set their employees up for greater success?
I think one of the prevalent things that needs to be done here is acknowledging the ask. So, you talked about the extra effort to actually go in person. I went to 2 events last night, and the commute, the cost of the commute, the getting ready, the decisions on wardrobe. This is all something I haven't had to think about for a long time. And we've always just said, that's what you used to do. Suck it up. Just go back and do it again, is sort of the expectation. But if we really step into understanding what goes into showing up in person, I think we have to recognize there's an extra effort there. There's a cost. There's an investment of time, energy, attention, of all the resources into that. And so if we're smart leaders, we'll be really thinking about what we're asking. And if we are going to ask to bring people together, and there are very valid reasons to come together, we will focus not only on the content and collaboration aspects, we will also embed opportunity for connection. Because there's a lot of sort of misunderstanding, I think, right now, saying, having everybody in the office, if we're not in the office together, we're not connected. Well, loneliness was a problem before the pandemic. That's why Dr. Vivek Murthy wrote a book called Together, based on his assessment that the biggest health problem in the US was lack of social connection. That was before the pandemic. So unless we intentionally redesign our experience to say, it's not be on Zoom calls in the office and eat lunch at your desk, it's actually embedding social connection in with our content and collaboration, then we can have rich reasons to come together that are worth all the wardrobe choices, commute, and so on. So a big opportunity there to acknowledge the ask and design for it.
Very valid point, Claire, of loneliness being an issue pre-pandemic. That's, I think, something to underscore. Stephen, what are your thoughts on setting what employers can do to set up their employees for success 2023 and beyond?
Yeah, thanks so much, Kelley. And Claire, I love what you had to say. I've got a couple of insights. And this is, again, not based on research or not based on payroll per se, but just based on what we're trying to do at our own organization. And we have found that employees were concerned about being heard, being engaged. And so we undertook an actual employee engagement exercise. And, we're big on NPS scores, net promoter scores, and would you refer a colleague or a friend to, our certification courses, our activities, our professional development. But we thought, well, let's ask our employees, would you recommend a colleague or friend to come to work at our organization? And I think employers have to be not afraid to ask those questions, not afraid to understand employee engagement, and need to be prepared to act on what they discover. I feel I've been with our organization for over 25 years. I feel it's a great place to work, a great work environment. We've got a lot of people that have long tenure at our organization. That doesn't mean it's perfect. I don't think any organization is perfect, but you have to be open to wanting to get that feedback, wanting to be concerned about employee engagement. So I think that's what employers really need to start focusing on, tapping into what's going on, understanding the need to be flexible. There was another report that I saw a couple of weeks ago, because we're undertaking a huge education research project right now about the future of payroll skills and education. And one of the things that we discovered in just doing some research is that millennials actually want to come into the office. So there's this perception that they don't want to, they're happy working virtually because, they kind of grew up with the cell phone and things that, the four of us would not have. And we've kind of evolved and adapted, but it's just been there for them. But that doesn't mean they obviously want to be in the office all the time. And again, this comes back to employee engagement. What is valuable for engagement? It doesn't mean bringing employees into the office and then getting on Zoom when somebody's sitting 3 offices down, because that is happening. It means making sure you're taking those opportunities for collaboration and understanding what's going to be beneficial for the employee population, but more importantly, what's going to engage them. I really think that's going to be important. And then employers can provide some of those other things that we've talked about, the wellness programs, the financial literacy education, and all of those things that just make a very enriched experience for employees at an organization that really demonstrates they care about employee engagement and making sure that, because an engaged employee base is going to provide a really strong organization. There's no question.
Great point, Stephen. And the feedback is so essential. I mean, so much so that reality TV shows have succeeded on the CEO going and working at the call center, being frontline and being like, oh my God, this is what the culture is actually like. Like being part of that and seeing it is so essential. Evangeline, you're talking with employees every day. What do you think employers need to do, and maybe employees to, set themselves up for success for the years to come?
Well, I love the comments both from Stephen and Claire. So I'll just maybe add a couple of things and maybe repeat a couple of things. But I think employees right now, based on what we're hearing, and just even again what a lot of our research is telling us, is that there's certain components that they feel that their leadership should always keep working on, and one of them is communication. So they want to be communicated to authentically, as transparently as possible, and as much as possible. And I think that's something we definitely learned in the virtual world, is that you have to actually have mindful communication. Like you have to book it in, you have to plan it, you have to make sure that you're reaching out to people and talking to them about their personal lives, not just work. So I think it's really upping the game of communication within organizations. People want to also have a really good understanding of career development and their own professional development. So they want their employers supporting that. And again, that's going to be something that's going to be different for everyone. But again, it's going to be different for everyone. So, each leader needs to sit down with their team, each person on their team, and understand, where do you want to go? What are your aspirations? And some of those aspirations may not be staying with your company down the road. And that's something you have to understand. But as a good leader, you should still want to mentor and help someone grow. And if that means then they move on, then you just continue to mentor and grow additional people into new roles. So that's really important, because that creates a really engaged, loyal employee base and a very productive employee base. People are also wanting to feel safe. So this is where diversity, equity, and inclusion comes in. They want to have a feeling of safety, belonging, no matter where they come from, what their religion is, what their backgrounds are. They want to have that in their workplaces. And so they want an organization who is showing that they actually are invested in that and have programs where they're trying to, promote that and ensure that that is what's happening. And I think, I'm just thinking anything else, recognition. That was the, I knew it started with an R. So recognition is also something that we see a lot of employees are constantly coming to us saying is really important, and is one of the reasons why candidates come to us looking for a job sometimes, because they feel they're working really hard. They've been, put through a lot the past couple of years, and have received little to no recognition for everything that they've done. And sometimes recognition is easy as just patting someone on the back and saying, thanks, like, thank you so much. I'll take you for lunch or whatever, right? Like it doesn't have to be a huge gesture, but people need to know that they're appreciated, that their work's important. It's that it's fundamental to the organization. And they want employers to acknowledge that. And again, in the hybrid virtual in-person world, it can be a little bit trickier sometimes doing, recognition programs. But again, it just means that you have to be creative, think outside the box, come up with some different things, and then also understand that recognition is different for everybody. Not everybody wants you to stand on a podium and be, oh, so and so is the greatest person ever, and call them out, because that's just horrifying for some people. So as a leader, you have to be very mindful that, I know Joe doesn't like that, but so I'm just going to go and make sure that he knows I appreciate him I don't need to do it in front of the team because he's not comfortable with that. So I think those are some additional points that may stand out.
And I appreciate the nuance of that, because there's so many studies that point to recognition over even financial benefits or a raise or what have you, but
Yeah.
in a way that's comfortable for that individual, for sure. So we're getting into our final moments here. I'm going to ask you all another question, but before I do, so for the panelists, if you've got any links that you want to pop into the chat, we'll get to any of your tools. But if while I'm asking this next question, if you want to find any of them, that's great. Evangeline, I'm actually going to come back to you first, as you're probably looking for your link.
Okay.
And I just want to bring the conversation back to, we started it with the financial stress. We're going into Financial Literacy Month, which I think is a very important month. A lot of criticism about really what is it doing, because at the end of the day, Canadians are in more debt. They're more stressed. They know what to do sometimes, or maybe they don't. So how important is that financial wellness component to creating a healthier workforce, a more productive, happy workforce, and retention? You touched a little bit on the RSPs, and maybe Stephen will talk about the Pay Yourself First in his research, but what are your thoughts there?
Well, I absolutely think that, I mean, RSPs are a component of financial wellness, because they certainly can be a tool to that. But I think Stephen touched on the fact that, a lot of people, have maybe not really grown up with a good understanding of what good money management is. I think a lot of people, I think there's just this mindset that, well, you should just know to do that. And it's like, no, I mean, if someone isn't brought up and taught that, they don't just know it, right? So I think people being taught some good financial management skills is great. So offering some sort of program around that, I think, is critical part of a good financial wellness program. I also think, as people get themselves into some tough situations, being able to have a very discreet, confidential conversation with somebody about, what do I do? Like, because a lot of people don't know what next steps should be. They know they have a problem, but they need help. So that's where things around an employee assistance program that has that kind of counseling component to it, where they can kind of walk them through some different things that they can do to help them. So that can help kind of take a little bit of that stress off, and at least provide them some sort of solution to their situation. Because I think financial wellness is absolutely critical, because when it comes down to it, money is important, and we have bills to pay, and that's why a lot of us work, because we have those bills to pay, and so it can cause a lot of stress when we don't have the money there. And so and people have so much more stress right now anyways, that the last thing they need to be doing is layering on additional stuff. So any support that they can have, that the employer can provide, is really, really important, because because I think that links right into the mental health of people, because financial wellness will go right into depression, anxiety, all of that. So I think those two components are so linked, and what we're seeing is more and more people are wanting that absolutely from their employers, and will actually leave their employer if they don't feel they're being adequately supported.
Yeah, I think that's so essential, Evangeline. Working on money-wise workplaces, I've talked to so many CEOs and head of HR, and even last week, one CEO was telling me that she found out, the employee didn't come to her, of course, but found out that they were cashing out their RSPs to afford the dentist. I mean, what kind of tax implications and tax stress are you going to have next year for that? So totally echo that. Stephen, we just have a few minutes left in Clare, but if you'd love to touch on that, I'd love to hear.
I'll just quickly touch on it, because I'll just reinforce what Evangeline said. First of all, it's awareness. Some people aren't even aware. And again, I appreciate you putting the financiallyfit.ca link in the chat, Kelley, because I think that can be shared, because some of what needs to happen here is people need to know where they are on that continuum. Are they coping? Are they comfortable, or are they stressed? And so if that's the case, what's the next logical thing for them to do? Is become educated. And again, employers need to be able to provide those supports to their employees. There's simple things they can do. There's simple programs that can be put in place. Because again, if we're looking at providing flexibility to provide a good workplace, it comes with a whole host of other things as well. So I think it's really critical that that we work to support employees on that basis. Looking forward to Financial Literacy Month and the fact that our institute is going to be putting out more tools to help people understand their paychecks. Because I think, again, it comes back to what Evangeline said. We just expect that people know how to, that their first job, they know how to fill out a TD1. What the heck is this form?
Yeah.
Just simple things like that. So there's a lot of great work being done and more work that's going to be done. So we're going to come out with a tool that employers can use to look at the fitness of their employees in general and use that as a guide to help them support their employees as well. So that's going to be coming out through November.
Oh, Stephen, that's fabulous. We'll really be looking forward to that because yeah, it's that inertia. If you don't know what to do, people are scared to make a financial mistake, so then they just don't do anything. And if it's not for the tools and the education, they just don't. So amazing. And thanks for everyone putting their links in. Claire, would love to hear your final words on that.
Just an endorsement. I was 23 years old when my dad was struggling with cancer, and I had to call for financial guidance through the EAP program. And without having access to that, my question was, do we need to be bankrupt? Like I had no idea, 23 years old, what's happening, right? So fully endorse all of the efforts that employers can make to lighten the load that people are going through. Don't forget your leaders are carrying such a big load right now. The burnout that we've seen, I think there's a study with large Canadian data, 82% of leaders are feeling emotionally exhausted and spent. And so whatever we can do for our leaders to assist them in really designing that compelling workforce, recognizing it's harder to manage hybrid and giving them the tools is going to go a long way to inviting that sustainable and inclusive performance that is the big goal.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Just a couple of comments here. Catherine, thank you for your comment. She's saying consider offering multiple work environments, i.e. 30 hours a week, 37. This allows employees to balance their personal lives. Absolutely. Trevor is saying, thank you so much to everyone for putting on this very informative time in the midst of preparing for budgeting for 2023. So that leaves us with 1 minute of spare time. What a phenomenal panel. Thank you to everyone watching. Again, Stephen Van Alstine from the National Payroll Institute. Thank you. Evangeline Berube from Robert Half, and of course, Clare Kumar, who is a coach and consultant. We are so thankful to all of you. If you want to share this, do let us know. We will have the link post-event probably within a day or so. If you think that someone could benefit from this incredible panel, and feel free to reach out to us personally as well if you'd like more information or any of the research or tools that we have shared. So with that, we bid you a